Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carter. I love talking about movies, horror movies, comic books, and superheroes. One of my most anticipated movies of all year is 28 Years Later. I love 28 Days Later. I enjoy 28 Weeks Later. And the trailers for 28 Years Later have been some of my favorite trailers in recent memory. So when I say I was really excited for 28 Years Later, that's a bit of an understatement. I walked into the theater today really looking forward to it. I only knew that it had good reviews and I didn't really know anything about the plot. And I walked out a little conflicted. I'll tell you right out of the gate that unlike some other people that I have seen online, I didn't love the movie, but I also didn't hate the movie. I don't think it's a massive disappointment like people are saying, but that's just because I haven't grown up with the 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later films. I only watched 28 Days Later for the first time earlier this year, and same with 28 Weeks. So I'm not really connected with these franchises. I just wanted to bring my opinion as someone who really loves film, who understands film, and bring it as someone who's not a huge fan of the franchise, but was still really looking forward to this film. Now, kind of the question that I'll be asking is it really that disappointing? Is it really that great? Or was it worth the hype? Does it live up to the hype? And I think it's a mixed answer to all of those. I don't think it's the greatest zombie movie ever. I don't think it's the most disappointing movie ever, though. I mean, that's just me, again, my personal opinion. 28 Years Later, it reunites Alex Garland and Danny Boyle, who were the original writer and the original director of the 28 Days Later film, respectively. And honestly, it has a star-studded cast. You got Ralph Fiennes, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Jodie Comer, Jack O'Connell, just to name a few. But to me, the performance that stood out the most was the performance of Spike, the little boy. I don't know the actor's name. I think it's Alfie. I could totally be wrong on that, but he genuinely did such a good job to where I was kind of blown away. He's standing toe-to-toe with Ralph Fiennes and Jodie Comer. Phenomenal performers. And he's just doing fine. It doesn't have any trouble performing with them, and that was really he deserves all the praise in the world for this film. And there's a lot of really good stuff in the film. There's sequences of tension, of genuine dread and fear. There's some really good jump scares. There's the cinematography that's very unique, very interesting. I'm sure you are aware, but they used iPhones to film this film, to shoot this film, whatever, and they used specialized rigs. Now, iPhone, it's not just pulling out one from your pocket. When they say they shot with iPhone, there's a $100,000 rig, if not $1 million rig, attached to the iPhone to help with lens support, to help with color, to help with scope, etc. Literally everything you can imagine and more are attached to these iPhones. And something that I really loved that they did with that was in the film, whenever there's a kill, whenever a character shoots a zombie or an infected, they call them zombies in the film, so haha. Whenever they shoot an infected with a bow and arrow, and the arrow goes through their head or their heart, the film stops and kind of rotates a little bit to a different angle. That's because the performers are actually wearing a rig, a circle around them, a semicircle in front or semicircle behind, or a full circle full of iPhone cameras pointed, so it gets different shots, different angles of each frame, and they switch between those frames to show you the full kind of glory of this kill. And I really enjoyed that. It was very unique, very visually stunning, played really well in the film, and it just added to the intensity and the style of this film, which again, the style of this film is really unique. It's stunning. I thought the style was great. I thought the intensity, especially in the first half or first act, was really unmatched. Honestly, some of Garland and Boyle's best work when it comes to writing and directing in the first act. There's a story. It almost feels like there's two sets of stories, though. There's the first half and the second half. I'm one of the people that really loved the first half. The first half is very tense. It's very straightforward. It's very kind of simple, and the second half gets into a little bit more detail with character and with plot and with dynamics. And honestly, I just didn't find the dynamic especially to be as engaging between the two characters in the second half than it was in the two characters in the first half. And I can't really talk about my big issues with this film without talking about spoilers. So before I get into that, I will just say 28 Years Later is a very divisive film. Personally, I enjoyed quite a bit of it, but I also didn't like quite a bit of it. There's stuff that I really actively dislike and despise that I'll talk about coming up. But there's also stuff that I really loved that took my breath away. There's a sequence here in the film that's so intense I found myself to be visibly sweating almost. It really just is such a unique film, and while it may not be my favorite of the year, I'm very glad it got made. It's unique, it's interesting, it's a talking point. And while it's not the direction that I was hoping they'd take the franchise, at least with the second half, it's not quite the intense, nail-biting thriller that 28 Days was, with a lot of those harrowing and depressing, desperate themes that they have in 28 Days, but it still has a lot to offer. So it's not by any means a bad movie. And I think people who are calling it disappointing, from my point of view, it's people who have been fans of the franchise for a long time that wanted to see it go in a little bit of a different direction. If you see this movie and you think it's disappointing, I totally understand that. You are totally entitled to your opinion. For me, it was a little disappointing, but I still found myself enjoying the film overall. By no means would I give this a bad score. I just wanted to get that all out of the way before I get into the spoilers, because the spoilers for this are going to be all negative. All the negative stuff is in the second half. So right away, we're going to get into spoilers. If you care about that, turn off the video now. Just know that, I recommend seeing this film. And without any further ado, we're going to get right into spoilers. So to understand the two halves of this film, you have to know kind of the structure. The first half, or the first kind of third to half, I didn't really pull out my watch and time it, is Aaron Taylor Johnson taking his son Spike out to the mainland to hunt. He gets his first kill with the infected, and that's the point. They get stranded on the mainland, something comes up, and Aaron Taylor Johnson has to tell his son, oh, that fire over there, we don't go over there, I don't know what that is, that's not another village. Stuff like that. They eventually make it back to the mainland safe, or to the island safe, pardon me, and they get back to their colony, have a big party for Spike. Spike sees his dad, munch some chick's box. It's not his mom, so he's pretty pissed, and his mom is completely bedridden to this point, and she's very confused. She has an illness that we don't know about. So he goes home really upset that his dad was boistering him up, Spike nailed all these shots, Spike didn't show any fear when Spike was very scared. Spike missed half his bow and arrow shots, if not all of them, besides one, etc., etc. So he goes home pretty upset, and plus his dad's out banging some chick that's not his mom. It's got to be a bummer. Spike gets really pissed at his dad, who's Aaron Taylor Johnson, and eventually takes his mom, Jodie Comer, and leaves the island. This was probably the first part for me where I was like, what just happened? Because it's so quick and it feels very, very strange. When Spike is out there, he's almost traumatized to an extent. He sees so much death and so much stuff that he's like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. But I need to find a doctor for my mom, and my grandpa or some random dude told me about this, a doctor that is out there that's insane. My dad told me not to go, but my dad's a liar, so I'm going to go. And that part made sense to me. My dad's a liar, I'm going to go. But the fact that he went back out there so soon was a little bit unbelievable for me. And the fact that he also took Jodie Comer, who at this point is shown to be completely bedridden, was a little surprising as well, because she's completely bedridden. She does not know, she is confused, and her illness is later revealed to be cancer that's spread to her brain later on in the film, so she has no idea what's going on. So the second half of the film is a lot more slower paced. It's a lot more meticulous. It's a lot of Jodie Comer and Spike, this kid, walking through the countryside, talking about things, and she, about every couple minutes or so, will call him dad, and then have a long monologue about memories of her father or something. And well, it worked for me the first time. I think Garland and Boyle really hammered it home, really just hammered it over your head that this woman is sick and this woman is confused. And for me, I got the point, dude. I think the biggest issue with this film, besides, the very big spoiler things that I can talk about, my big takeaway was that the pacing in the second half really did not do it for me. It slows down to pretty much a crawl at some points. And instead of being very quietly intense or very loudly intense, it's just kind of there. It feels like it's spinning its wheels. There's sequences that are intense, one in a gas station, one in a tunnel, one in a train car. But it feels like the time between these sequences is just kind of spent doing the same mundane thing. We learn a tiny bit about these characters, but then we mostly just get Jodie Comer talking about her father in the countryside. So for me, that's where a lot of I guess for a lot of people, the disappointment would come in. That's where my, not dislike, but my issues with the film came in, is that it just kind of felt repetitive in that second half, doing the same thing. Eventually, Spike and Jodie Comer find a train car, and there's an infected pregnant woman there. Now, what 28 years later does with the infected is two sides of the same coin. One side that I really enjoyed with the alphas, with kind of like a hierarchy to the infected. You know, they're evolving, the rage virus is evolving. And then the other side is there's a pregnant infected. Somehow they bred. The infected woman gives birth to someone who's not infected, and then they kill the infected woman, and that's it. And that's kind of what they explain. Like, it's just kind of brushed off. Like, oh yeah, there's an infected chick, but there's a baby that came out of an infected, and Ralph Fiennes is like, oh, the placenta is a miracle. And that's literally their explanation for it. Like, that's it. They don't really care. And it's like kind of touched on. I'm assuming it's going to be in the sequel or in the third one, but it just felt very strange to have that just be like, oh yeah, that happened. Isn't that crazy, guys? Just touched on and then just moved on so quickly. It felt very strange, very odd, and I think that was the second thing that really was like, oh, I don't understand that choice from Garland and Boyle. And then the next choice that I didn't understand, and this is where like the very heavy spoilers come in. So again, I will be spoiling the complete like last 15 minutes of the film. So here we go. Jodie Comer again has brain cancer. So they meet Ralph Fiennes, and he has a temple, kind of like an area that is a memorial, so to speak. It feels, it's supposed to be touching, I feel like, but it's actually very harrowing and horrifying. Like, but Spike, I think, finds it touching, and it's like, oh, cool, it's a memorial. Like, there's a mountain of skulls and bones, and it's like shot in a horrifying way. But then Spike reacts like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, you know what? This is a nice memorial. And Ralph Fiennes, you know, in his mind, it's a memorial. He says something in Latin. I cannot remember what it was for the life of me. What he does is he takes dead bodies, burns them completely, and gets the bones, cleans the bones, and stacks them. So that night, they're talking to Ralph Fiennes, who's a doctor, and he diagnoses Jodie Comer with brain cancer. That's why she's so confused. That's why she has like a bloody nose, a fever. That's why she has lumps on her body. And so she realizes that she's going to die. You know, Spike freaks out, and it's a very emotional, very touching scene. The whole film is very somber, very emotional. There's rare jokes here. There's a military side character that is most of the humor here, and he's not in the film very long. He's like 10 minutes maybe. And the film, again, is extremely somber, extremely serious, has a lot of themes of death, how people deal with death, how you deal with father figures, lies, growing up, loss of innocence. And I say all that because Ralph Fiennes, like, mercy kills Jodie Comer with her permission. She asks him pretty much to mercy kill her. He disappears. He comes back with Jodie Comer's skull and hands it to her son. And that is something to where it's very hard for a movie to take me out of it completely. It's very hard for me to be watching a movie and there's a choice that just takes me out of the film completely. Removes all kind of engagement that I had with the film. Removes all of the, like, I can't get attached to the characters now. I'm just confused or I'm, like, perturbed. And I know what Alex Garland was going for. He's going for, like, in this different society, death is... like, this is another death for this boy. He is seeing his mother's death. He is seeing what she is, and he is seeing that this place is a place to remember his mother by. She is not, like, in pain anymore. She's free. And the skull is like a representation of that. For me, all I could think of was this random dude that he had just met in like a bone temple, bringing his mother's skull to him and handing it to him. And that's literally like what happens. That's basically what happens. No themes connected. That is literally what happens on screen. This guy he met that day brings his own mother's skull to him and puts it in his hand. If that was me, I would be losing my absolute mind. I would be freaking out. I'd be screaming and crying. The gun would be in my mouth, right? I would be throwing myself in that fire because that's easily the most disturbing thing that I can ever imagine in my entire lifetime. And Alex Garland and Danny Boyle play it straight because it's a very somber film. And yeah, I just could not get into this very emotional moment, unfortunately. It does have a nice ending, though, where he climbs the top of the skull mountain and puts her skull on top. kind of a weird image. It's a cool image, but also like, wow, that's a lot. From there, you get a very weird kind of rush through the last 10 minutes of this film. Like, it goes from that scene to Ralph Fiennes and Spike hiding underground, and then the Alpha comes with his massive hog and tries to kill him. And it's like, it immediately jumps to that. And then Ralph Fiennes is like, Spike stabs him with morphine, so the Alpha goes to sleep, and Ralph Fiennes is like, yeah, you should probably go. And Spike's like, yeah, you're right. So he goes, and then he drops the infected baby that's not infected back off at the island, and he leaves on his own. And I was like, okay, it just feels very rushed, like kind of like very quick pacing, setting up the sequel a little bit. And then you get the part with the movie that I struggled the most with. The part where, it's the easiest for me to diagnose something that I did not like. Yes, the pacing dragged for me. I think the, time in the editing room could have been spent a little bit to kind of chop up some scenes, shorten some scenes. I think that, there's a few things in the film that I didn't agree with, that I didn't like the skull thing, the pregnant infected thing, Spike leaving the island with his mom. That's all logic gaps that can be argued. The ending is something that I'm dead set on. There's very rare things in a film where I'm dead set on, no, I hated that. And it can't be argued, it can't be, changed in my mind, and this ending is one of those. So the last 2 or 3 minutes of this film, Spike runs into a highway and he's stuck. There's rocks. So the last 3 minutes of this film, Spike is stuck at a road. There's rocks covering the road, an infected chasing him, and Jack O'Connell comes out in a tracksuit / priest garb, and he's got a chain, he's got gold teeth, he's got tattoos, and he's got rings on him, and he has dreads. I can't remember exactly, but he comes out looking absolutely ridiculous. And he says something like, hey, do you need help? My friends and I are more than happy to help. And about 8 other people, also in tracksuits, come out looking like the most stereotypical European people. There's that meme of the Euro trash or European or the Slavic man all in tracksuits. They look exactly like that. And they're laughing and heavy metal plays, and they're doing backflips around the zombies and cool guitar riffs, and they're laughing and punching zombies. It felt like they had their ending. And then the Wayans brothers came in and wrote a parody ending for their film, and they used that on accident. It genuinely felt like it was an accident to put this in the film. It comes off as such a tonal misfire. It gave me tonal whiplash, and I almost never get tonal whiplash. Small changes in tone, very uneven changes. In the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse, there's a very somber scene, and then, Spider-Man Noir cracks a joke and it completely ruins it for me. But this movie genuinely had me sitting in the theater confused. I can't believe that just happened. I can't believe that just ended like that. Because again, it plays off like a complete parody of it, when the whole film is this very somber, very serious, meditative experience on life, on post-apocalyptic worlds. Apparently, if you're British, there's themes on Brexit and whatever. I'm not British, so I wouldn't know. And it just comes off in the most tone-deaf, strange manner, to where I did not understand in the slightest what was happening. It felt very odd, very strange, and honestly just frustrated me. I left the film with a bad taste in my mouth. I left the film okay, so instead of sitting on that journey that Spike went on, and how it ended with the loss of his mother and he's on his own, he left the community his father's in. Obviously there's something going on with that community. There's more with Ralph Fiennes that I want to know about. Instead, I just left thinking about the tracksuit mafia that was doing backflips and punching zombies and laughing. It just feels so out of place. They looked so ridiculous, and it could not have come from a more out of place area in the film. And that's my biggest issue with the film, is the ending. It honestly brings down my score by at least a point, if not more. And that sucks to say, because I was really looking forward to this film. I wanted it to be great. I never walk into a movie wanting it to be bad. I know there's people online that do that. And it sucks that you have people on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, reviewers, audience members that will walk into a film actively rooting for it to fail. I never do that. Never in my life do I do that. And it bummed me out to walk out of 28 years later not completely loving it. Again, do I like the film? Yes, I think it's really well made. Cinematography is stunning. The editing style is very slick and unique. Has some great gore, has some very memorable sequences, harrowing imagery. But there's that tonal shift at the end, very obvious pacing issues, some lore things that I did not like, and the big emotional moment is kind of stunted for me, and that's just a personal thing. Like, if you can see past that, I am very glad, because I have a friend who saw past it completely and was like, that was very touching, I cried. I'm like, I'm very jealous. I wish that happened to me. Is 28 years later a disappointment? I'd say no, but is also 28 years later a fantastic film? I would also say no. There's points in here that are genuinely phenomenal. Again, that first half is so breathtaking, is so stunning, and then it culminates with one of the best sequences I've seen in a film all year, when they're running on the bridge to get back to the island. One of my favorite sequences I've seen in a film in a long, long time. And then the second half kicks in, and I just didn't really care for that very much, unfortunately. The emotional beats stuck with me for the most part, but I felt like the character dynamic was weak, and the writing was weaker as well. And that's very unfortunate. So overall, I'd have to give 28 Years Later like a 6.5 out of 10, a 7 out of 10 maybe. And it seems like I'm being overly negative in this review, and I'm not trying to be. I did enjoy the film. I would recommend everyone go check out the film, because I will support horror till the day I die. Horror is a genre that I will support day in, day out, unless it's like Slender Man or The Bye-Bye Man. Then I'll skip it. But hey, other than that, we're good. Anyways, guys, what did you think about 28 Years Later? Did it live up to the hype? Was it a disappointment, or did you absolutely love it? Let me know down in the comment section below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.